I still remember the moment I saw the announcement of Dishonored Death of the Outsider. In that moment, a cascade of emotions washed over me as I tried my best to comprehend the finality of that title, Death of the Outsider. The possible lore implications for the canonical universe of Dishonored going forward overwhelmed me. However, we are now just weeks away from the release of Death of the Outsider, and the dust has been given time to settle as we prepare for what could be the penultimate entry in the Dishonored franchise. But questions still remain. If the Outsider is no more after the ending of the upcoming expansion, how could we even consider the possibility of a Dishonored 3 with no all-powerful entity to grant us abilities beyond mortal comprehension? How would the Outsider's demise affect the in-game world of Dishonored and the people who inhabit that world? Most notably, Corvo Attano and Emily Caldwin, and in my mind, as of writing this, one of, if not the most important question of all. Could the Outsider's death be a good thing for Dishonored?
Another surprise. So be it.
Now, before you all let out a collective cry of despair and sadness, let me just say that the Outsider is a great character in the Dishonored universe, and I like him just as much as any other diehard fan of the series. However, I am approaching this topic from the perspective of a narrative lead at Arkane Studios. Disclaimer, I am not in any way, shape, or form a narrative lead at Arkane Studios. As a storyteller, I have to determine what is best for the story of Dishonored going forward without betraying the value of the stories that came before. The Outsider is an integral part of the Dishonored series, but I would argue that the series can and most likely will continue on without him in future installments. He has been a mainstay in the series for 2 full games, 2 DLCs, and now a standalone expansion to one of those full games. I pose the question, where could we go story-wise with the Outsider that hasn't already been done? We've played as 3 different characters, all given the same mark and imbued with supernatural powers. We've restored order and balance to 2 cities fraught with chaos and anarchy. Death of the Outsider is now showing us that we needn't have the mark to obtain special abilities or save a city and its citizens from utter destruction. This idea is embodied within Billy Lurk, a character introduced in the DLC for the first Dishonored, the Knife of Dunwall, and the Brigmore Witches. In the trailers released so far, and from information gleaned from the living legend that is Harvey Smith, we know that Billy carries artifacts imbued with void energies that enable her to perform acts of stealth or violence on par with that of Corvo, Emily, and even the Old Knife himself, Dowd. This presents an interesting proposition. If someone were to find objects imbued with void energy and gain powers similar to those we've seen in previous Dishonored games, what purpose does the Outsider now serve? That purpose, at least to me, has become increasingly clear as the Dishonored franchise has marched forward, and especially after learning that Billy does not carry the Outsider's mark, and yet is still able to wield supernatural abilities. The Outsider's purpose is to cause chaos and to disrupt the natural order of the material world. This viewpoint is shared by the very same character who wishes to see the Outsider dead and see a world freed from his influence, Dowd, the Knife of Dunwall. Now, I want you to take a moment and see the events that have transpired across the Empire from Dowd's perspective. Empress Jessamine Caldwin was murdered at Dowd's hand, that much is certain. But it was the Outsider who enabled Dowd to perform the deed by granting him his mark. Dowd learned of Delilah and her plan to possess young Emily Caldwin and rule the Empire in her place, a plan that was once again enabled by the Outsider granting Delilah his mark. Delilah would then go on to steal the throne by force years later, with many civilians dying by either her or her coven's hands. Without the mark, Delilah might not have been able to kill so many innocents and throw the Empire into chaos. There is a correlation between all of these moments in time and others that have occurred across the Dishonored timeline, and they all connect back to the one who was indirectly responsible for these events, the Outsider. Now, correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation, and I am well aware that there are holes in Dowd's logic. All I am trying to do is convey what I believe to be his argument in the best way that I can. Assuming the Outsider meets his end, and also assuming we manage to get a Dishonored 3, might there be a possibility that going forward we now get powers from Void artifacts? Will the Void consume the world that we know and have come to love, as has been hinted at in the past? Or maybe a far more chilling idea. Will this be the final entry in the Dishonored franchise? I am inclined to believe that isn't the case, and that we will see a Dishonored 3 in a few years' time. However, I can't help but find myself thinking that the Outsider won't have a place in a potential Dishonored 3, but I also see that there is at least one way to carry on the gameplay tradition of the previous games into future iterations.
The Dishonored series, one way or the other, will experience a pretty catastrophic change going forward. Though it's interesting because Billy's powers are all tied to artifacts that are linked to the Void. She doesn't have the mark of the Outsider, so presumably in a world without an Outsider, she would still have some sort of link to the Void, to the energies of the Void.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. This video was really hard to write, as my head is filled with thoughts and questions about Death of the Outsider. I've probably posed more questions than answers in this video, but the truth is that we won't have any true answers until Death of the Outsider releases on September 15th. I merely wished to put some of my own thoughts out there and see what people would think. If you have any thoughts about Death of the Outsider, or want to provide feedback to improve these videos, leave a comment down below and let's discuss. And remember that the Outsider walks among us.